Howdy, folks. Welcome to the PodCAST Iron. My name is Laura Mullen-Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. Our guest on today's show is Noah Kirby. Noah has a long career as a professor of art and sculpture, as well as being a board member for the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and he is co-director of 6 Mile Sculpture Works in Granite City, Illinois. Noah and his wife, Allison Orlette Kirby, have personally supported me as an individual artist and iron caster throughout the years, and I owe them so much. I actually think that Noah is partially responsible for why I started this podcast, and that is all covered in the interview, so stay tuned and you'll hear those details in a little bit. But seriously, Noah, I can't even list all the times you guys have helped me out, and I know that I'm not the only one. So from me and everyone else that you've supported throughout the years, thank you. And thank you for letting me capture your story up until this point. The PodCAST Iron Show is sponsored in part by individual supporters on Patreon. And yes, that's about 20 of our friends and colleagues. So thank you to everyone who has joined as a Patreon member to help me afford the production costs of keeping this show going. And I'd also like to thank our top supporters of the show, which are Sloss Metal Arts, Crescent Creative, and the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. These fantastic organizations are the main resources keeping my ability to produce these episodes afloat. So I'm going to take just a quick few moments to introduce them to you. Crescent Creative is a digital design and fabrication studio located in Birmingham, Alabama. They utilize CNC router technology to produce boundary patterns, outdoor signage, furniture, and public art commissions. So if you have any questions, they have solutions. You can find them on Instagram at Crescent Creative. So check them out and give them a follow. They are always creating interesting and artistic custom designs for their customers, and I personally love seeing their projects pop up on my Instagram feed. Thank you so much, Crescent Creative, for being a top sponsor. Your support means so much to us. Another top supporter of the show is Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. Based in Birmingham, Alabama, they host our national conference on contemporary cast iron art and practices every 2 years. And to keep up to date on the national conference related things, you can follow NCCCIAP on Instagram, but also follow Sloss Metal Arts on Instagram and on TikTok. And that will keep you up to date on all things Sloss and conference related. Besides the national conference, they also have a full year-round schedule, including cast iron bowl making events, and the foundry is available to be rented out if you want to bring your class there or hold an event with their artists. So for more information about Sloss Metal Arts programming, visit their website, which is slossmetalarts.com. Thank you, Sloss Metal Arts. Another top supporter of the show is the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance. They are an organization that consists of iron casting artists in the western states of the U.S. Their organization's goals are to educate, demonstrate, and exhibit cast iron art in the western region of the U.S. And one of the ways they accomplish this goal is by organizing a conference every 2 years. So start planning to come out west for their conference in fall of 2024. Typically it's in October, but not always. Just keep your ear to the ground. And obviously there's no solid dates this far in advance, but I'll keep you informed when things start to develop. Rumor has it that the 2024 Western Conference will be in San Diego, California. And folks, that's almost as west as it gets. And I want to just point out that you don't have to live in the West to attend the Western Conference. So you should definitely make the trip no matter where you're based out of. They'll love to have you. A big thanks to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance and their board members for the support of this show. For more information about this fantastic organization, visit their website, which is wciaa.org. And one more thing, right before we get into the interview, I just want to mention an upcoming opportunity for the display of your large outdoor artwork. The city of O'Fallon, Missouri hosts a rotating sculpture series called The Shape of Community, and they've provided me with this exciting and informative video clip to show you, so let's watch it now.
If you're an artist or know someone who is, become a part of O'Fallon, Missouri's The Shape of Community Rotating Sculpture Series. No matter what medium you choose to sculpt your masterpiece, you get to use the whole O'Fallon community as your canvas. The Shape of Community invites artists from across the U.S. to have their work installed in prominent outdoor areas of O'Fallon to allow the public to see and interact with their creations. Some have even become permanent installations at sites within the city. Visit o'fallon.mo.us/shapeofcommunity for current examples and for more information on how to submit. So whether you weld it, cast it, or carve it, let the Shape of Community shine a light on your creation. It's time to cast your mold on a city's landscape.
Yes, when you visit their website, you will see that the cast iron art community is very well represented in the group of 10 sculptures presently installed. So you've got a good shot. And we're a little less than 1 year out on this time frame for the call for submissions. They will be jurying your entries in March of 2024. So start thinking about what piece from your catalog you want to apply with, or even make a new piece for the deadline. You've got plenty of time. If you have detailed questions about this opportunity, please contact the Cultural Arts Coordinator, Martin Linson, at mlinson@o'fallon.mo.us. And this is a great outlet for iron casting artists to showcase all the big, heavy metal works we've been casting. So finally, let's get into this conversation. Thank you so much for tuning in today, and please enjoy. Noah Kirby, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I'm flattered to be here, and I really enjoyed watching all of the shows. And I don't know why I'm in this company, but I'm really happy to be in this company of merry fools.
Well, I suspect that as we continue on with this interview, it'll be evident to the listeners why you're in this company of merry fools. And but to me, it's a great honor. You've helped me so much, you and Allison, just being in this area and being a resource for me creatively, and just also for the iron casting background stuff, like letting me make molds in your studio. It's like we shouldn't even get into it but I was thinking about it today, how much you and Allison really have helped me keep in the iron casting community. So let's get into it right away, though.
Absolutely.
Noah, well, who the hell are you anyway?
Nobody of consequence. Noah Kirby. I live in St. Louis, just outside of St. Louis, Missouri, in Alton, Illinois. This question that you lead off with is like, who the hell are you anyways? It's funny because I think I ask myself that every single day, and I think about, and I'm going to end with something I think that I've sort of come to the conclusion with, but it leads me to a story about when Allison and I were first dating. I was up in the morning and brushing my teeth, whatever, standing in front of the mirror. And I just stopped and just started staring at the mirror, right? And this is something I do a lot, right? Uh-huh. Like sitting there staring into my own eyes, my lovely blue eyes, going like, who the fuck are you? Like, who is this like person in this image in front of me? And Allison walks up and she goes, what are you doing? And I was like, and I said, I was just looking at this picture going like, who is this guy? So it's a question that's always there for me. And I've got a list. Like, look, this is who I am. It's a list that I made. But first and foremost, I'm a partner, collaborator, spouse of somebody that I admire quite a bit. I love Allison, and she's sort of top in my life. Other things that titles that I sort of adhere to are son, brother, not a father. Builder is one that I really respond to. Creator, maker, those kinds of things. Shit disturber, antagonist. Antagonist is one that I like quite a bit. It's one that I wholeheartedly embrace. Um, Advocate, teacher, and student myself. So I do teach at Webster University right now. I'm a visiting assistant professor there, and so I'm gonna say that role is a really important one for me. Um, and it brings me to like the answer to the question who I am whenever I'm staring at myself in the mirror is I think of something that Shakia Booker says when asked about her artwork, and she says, I sculpt myself every day. And I like that. I like the fact that I'm like every day I look at the mirror and I go, who is this guy? And then I get to go out and kind of either define the person or figure out who the person is. And that's who I am. There you go.
Thank you. That was fantastic. That may have been the best "Who the hell are you?" answer yet.
No pressure, but the rest of y'all better like level up, right?
Yeah. Come with a list.
Right.
That's what we need, everyone. And so this is a little bit, I'm actually going to go rogue a little bit because you touched on something. I just like, so at the past national conference at SLOSS, you had 2 students from Webster.
Yep.
What are their names?
Aaron and Abigail.
Okay.
First time sculpture students. One of them's a freshman, one of them's a sophomore. And they I said, hey, come do this crazy thing. And they were all in.
Yeah. And did they camp? I feel like I saw them because I camped. So I feel like they were camping with all of us. They didn't know anybody besides you and Allison. Didn't know anybody. And so
they didn't even know Allison. Yeah.
Okay. So they were on the pour crew with Black Dog Metal Arts. So I was on the pour crew with Jam and Danny Rohr from Peoria, Illinois. And
thank you for that, Danny.
Yeah. So like Allison was like kind of hanging around when we were getting started, and she was like, can Noah's students jump in on this? And so yeah, Jam and Danny were like, come on in. And so it's funny because they held the last ladle of that furnace, and
yeah, they were tickled.
They were like, it's funny because I am doing my own thing and I've got my cameras and I'm filming for my own YouTube or whatever. And so, but Gwen, who was from SIU Carbondale, Gwen, she's a grad student, and she had me and Isaac spot for your students. So we were each just like, shadowing them, just make sure everything is okay. And afterwards, they were like giddy, like in the best, like most that moment, like just, I could feel the joy, like just radiating off of them. And it reminded me that that's what this kind of is about. In a way, or at least the national conference, I feel like getting these new people in and getting them to, because Allison said that they had done a bronze pour or something.
We just poured a little bit of aluminum. We hadn't really done much. I'm new faculty there and trying to kind of make some stuff happen. And one of the things they wanted me to do was foundry work. So all they had done was like a little artist tile, as Wayne would say, scratch block pour at that point. So I'm like, y'all are kind of like all in. And they were all in. They were thrilled to be there. They come back and they're just like a bundle of joy and energy about it. So they've gotten everybody kind of jazzed about doing this some more. So yeah, big props to Jam and Danny and y'all and Isaac and everybody and Gwen for backing them up. So they're like, we're gonna build a furnace now. Okay.
Oh really? Yeah, oh my gosh.
But there's like 2 of them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. But when you and Allison bring out the conch shell and like, ooh, like St. Louis iron, like iron in the mid, like we'll. Me and Marty will come out of the woodwork and like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and that's the kind of the way Allison and I have always operated is we, there's not a lot of like institutional support for this happening here in the region. And when we got here, this was a part of a community that we had gotten introduced to. And so wanted to like carry on with that and keep it happening. So the best way to do something is like, oh, we're gonna make something happen, and then just invite all of our friends to come do it, and that's the only way we could get it to sort of happen around here, because neither of our schools were really, that wasn't a part of their curriculum necessarily. So
Yeah.
We just, make it happen and be a resource and try to bring people to us that we like to be around.
Yeah. And like, I feel like we all benefit. We all, as the people that I think, like to have us around.
Of course. Yeah.
Like, we benefit for that as well. And so when your students, if they're having something, like, let me know, because I've got molds ready to pour. And so I need help.
Stupid pours this week. This is like, I'm maybe I'm like bad at time management. But like we're pouring, this is the last week of classes. We're pouring on every day of the last week of classes and an extra day because they all like got stuff going. So that's how it is sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't think of a better, like, when it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
Analogy, but it's like when it's happening, it's really happening. So anyway, so that was like an unexpected gift for me, that I feel like my experience at the national conference was to witness them hold the ladle in front of the furnace for the first time, watch it be tapped in front of their faces, and have the iron come out, and then they pour it, and then the aftermath of their enthusiasm. Their attitudes, yes, their enthusiasm. Yeah, I was reinvigorated.
All the best parts of this community and all the best parts of this activity that everybody talks to. This is one of your one of my sort of trepidations about this was, well, what am I going to say that hasn't already been said? Like, I mean, everybody talks about like one of the reasons that you come to this is because of sort of community and these ideas of being connected to other people and hard work brings people together. That's true, and this is sort of unique. It's a unique quality. It's a unique characteristic in this population. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it's something I think about a lot, and something I think about especially in sort of kind of trying to prepare, for my interview. And it's like, what am I going to talk about? That I'll just talk about how I think about community and the hard work that this population embodies. Yeah. And I think that's something we'll get into, is like this idea of sort of an embodied belief.
Yeah, we'll circle back to it, I'm sure. But I wanted to go kind of off the record there and just tell you that witnessing their joy gave me so much joy that I don't know if I've ever witnessed that much like innocent joy from holding a ladle before. And it hit me, like really shook my being, that I was like, oh my gosh, you like this so much? I want to get to a point where you can do this again. Like, it was like, it evoked a selflessness in me that I don't know. Like, I'm like, we got to get these kids back at an iron field or whatever. Anyway, so
they're badgering me about doing stuff this summer, so we'll see what we can do.
Okay, well, I'm on call. Just let me know.
Sure.
Anyway, so let's get back to the script, which is talking about maybe your younger years and maybe if you have any memories of something that happened, a memory or two that kind of influenced you to become who you are today.
I don't know that I have any like seminal moments, that's the thing. And I'm not one that put a lot of stock into that either. Every day could be as significant or insignificant as any other day, and I try to think that way, mainly just to keep myself in good spirits, because my, predilection is towards sarcasm and cynicism. But there are things that were important to me in my development. And I think the biggest one really, and it's one of my earliest memories, is I started off, we lived in subsidized housing. We lived in, affordable housing development whenever I was really young, first through, third grade in the city. And I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm from East Tennessee originally. I'm actually not from Knoxville now, but I guess I am technically. So lived in kind of the city, Knoxville's not a huge city, but it's a decent sized town. And we lived in this housing development, and it was pretty new. So, it was a 70s, built in the 70s. And there was this construction dump in the back of the housing complex. So, and it was, big, 8 foot tall chain link fence with barbed wire on top of it. And there was this big cut into the ridge behind it where there was just this wall of red clay dirt, and then below that at the base, it was just all of this construction debris. It's 55-gallon barrels and 2x4s and, concrete blocks, cinder blocks and tarps and plastic and shit. And, that was like the first thing I remember is climbing that fence, and going over there and playing in the like toxic construction dump, from the construction of this place. And it was great, because it was full of water and it was, mosquitoes and nasty cesspools, but there were tadpoles and frogs. And, so like I have very fond and very clear memories of, climbing this fence and cutting myself on the barbed wire and building forts and tunnels and stuff with all the leftover construction debris. So that was like really important to me. And I kind of think that that's probably still who I am. It's like a dirty little kid who's playing in trash. I used to go up on the top, and I remember, and to me it was, 12 feet tall and jumping off of this cliff, but it was probably, like a 4 foot bank, but it was like red clay mud, red clay dirt. And I would go up there and jump off into the screeding bank, so you jump off into the dirt like you would in a snowdrift or something, roll out of it, and I'm covered in, red clay mud from head to toe. And then I'd go home and get in trouble, for being so filthy. So that's like a really important memory for me. And that was when I was really young. The next thing that I would say sort of adds to that equation is we moved. My parents, my dad's a construction worker, commercial construction, blue collar, working class. Neither one of my parents got their GED. They didn't. My mom was 17 when she had me. So, they were busy trying to live and survive and raise 2 kids by the time in 77. But they bought this, we joke, we call it a cinder block trailer. It was a concrete block house out in the country, kind of in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, outside of Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And it was a cinder block house, a concrete house, and it was kind of the same proportions as a trailer. So that's our joke in the family, is like we live in a cinder block trailer. And the same thing was, it was awesome. I mean, I went from being kind of urban poor to being rural poor. And but it was because I had nothing around me. Like, I had trees. I didn't have anything stopping me.
Yeah.
I had trees and ridges and caves and creeks, and I was running amok through the woods all the time. So I was kind of unfettered as a child. Probably, I can't say it was by design. It was by default that my parents were too busy trying to survive and feed us to worry about like what we were doing. And like, as long as I made it home at night, I was okay. And that construction debris was always there too, even at the Roar house. Like, my dad would come home with a pickup truck full of 2x4 scraps, and that sort of piled up in the backyard until we could use that to put an addition on the house or a roof or something. And so I played with 2x4s and circular saws and duct tape. Like, they make fun of me today, like the duct tape. We couldn't keep duct tape in the house because I was always making a gun or a knife or a sword or something with it. So that's like going through my little notes. Those are kind of formative, very early years. One of the things I do kind of maybe want to talk about is I really couldn't I'm glad my parents moved. It was the best thing they could have done for myself and my sister. Because in the school that I was in, I just sort of got left to the side. I was a smaller kid. And I didn't really learn how to read until we moved when I was in third grade. And so like between third and fourth grade is when I really learned how to read.
Mhm.
And that I think has affected me quite a bit in how I think and how I see things, because when I started, the teachers figured out I couldn't read. I started reading all these developmental books about Spot and Jane and all this kind of stuff. But in the house, there was also any books that were there. My parents didn't really have a lot of time to sort of help me with my lessons. So I just picked up the sort of paperback books that were laying around, and it was like, you know, 1984, an Animal Farm. So somehow I went from not being able to read to reading, dystopic,
Yeah.
books that are like, I should have been reading 1984 whenever I was in like the third, fourth or fifth grade, but I did. So
Yeah.
that's probably really, really framed how I see the world.
Yeah, I can see it. When you say that, I'm like, oh, huh.
That explains a lot. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Isn't that wild?
So I was reading like A Wrinkle in Time in 1984. And then the other things that we had like in our library, which
Yeah.
was like one shelf in our house, was a bunch of sort of out of date encyclopedias. So I'm just constantly looking through those. And my dad was taking a sort of an extension course on architectural drafting. So I had a great like 1970s architectural rendering. I still have the book,
Yeah.
all these sketches from houses that were 1970s designs. And then dictionaries. There was always like a crappy Webster's dictionary.
Mhm.
My lessons I can remember that I sort of hated were having to go through these vocabulary lists. And I would do my vocabulary list that they prescribed, but then I would go get my dictionary and sort of add to it. And I would look up the word, and then I would look at the words on kind of like either side of the words, and
Yeah.
that would be the other words. And that's something else that's kind of a trait that has stuck with me in how I do things. And I kind of like look at something and then look at what's next to it and then go from there. I
Yeah.
don't know. That's kind of
And
random.
well, but that's a good thing for an artist, I feel like, to have, to look at what you're focusing at, but then also the periphery. And those can be jumping off points as well. So
Yeah.
that's good. So then when did art come into the picture?
It came into the picture late. Like I wasn't talented. I'm not talented necessarily. I don't really ascribe to this notion of talent and some bestowed upon inherent quality. I mean, I see it as work.
Yeah,
And
I'm with you. I'm with you in that.
I hate this notion of creative genius. It infuriates me to no end, and I will ramble about it forever. And like I go on these diatribes in class about the sort of it's like the stupid shit about like creative genius that we ascribe to, these stupid mythologies that we ascribe to.
Yeah.
Everybody I know that's creative works their ass off, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So this sort of bestowed upon, innate thing is just not something that sits well with me.
Mhm.
So my creativity was, 2x4s and duct tape and that kind of stuff. I wanted to go into the military. Like that's the thing that I wanted to do. I was, watching Kung Fu theater. I wanted to be a ninja. Rambo First Blood, the movie was like an important movie to me,
Yeah.
which is another thing that I can kind of talk about in a weird way, because it's sort of disenfranchisement with authority and the sort of hypocrisy of those things. That's important to me. But I was in a thing called Sea Cadets. I met a kid when we moved to Oak Ridge or Claxton, who became a good friend of mine, and his dad was the commanding officer of this ROTC program. And so I joined it, and like I wanted to be a Navy SEAL,
Yeah.
forces, and I really wanted to be a combat engineer. So it was called CBs, like they're construction, they're like fighting construction workers.
Okay.
And that's kind of what I wanted to do. And so I joined and I was in Sea Cadets for a long time, all the way up until high school. And I played sports as well. I played football and until I got to high school, and then I got certified as a diver through Sea Cadets and started scuba diving and all this stuff. So like that was my path. I mean, to this day, if I go home or go to Tennessee and I see people that haven't seen me in 30 years, they're like, "When did you retire from the Navy or the Marine Corps?" I'm like, "No, art professor." It's like kind of a hard turn there.
Yeah.
But I can justify it in ways.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of service is something that sort of, I think, sort of emerged in my development. But the art thing didn't really happen the way, like there wasn't a super influential teacher. I wasn't always creative, and all kids are creative.
Yeah.
Like we spend most of our time beating that out of kids.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah.
So I don't know. That's kind of where I was at with the art thing. And to speak to it though, in high school is when I sort of switched over to sort of being about making art. See, this is my Corkit shirt.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Terrible. It is great.
It's really great.
So I got to go back to my notes. So for me, I think the art thing happened in high school because I had an art instructor who sort of didn't control us very much, just sort of let us do whatever. And I'm sort of an iconoclast, right? Like I'm a shit disturber and in school. And I remember a thing that was important that I did. Like I decided we needed to have an art club because the football team, which I was I was exiting the football team, but the football team decided they were going to do the cover of the school yearbook, and this one dude I can remember drew this, the school's mascot was a dragon, and drew this like lopsided dinosaur, it was a jerk, and I didn't like him. I didn't like playing football with him. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to start an art club and we're going to blow these guys out of the water. So we did. I started an art club, and we told the instructors, like, look, can you teach us, like, what can we do? We want to print our own annual covers because the drawing on this annual is really crappy. And so we launched a little coup, and he showed us how to silk screen, and all of the kids in art class made their own drawings. We made silk screens of them all. And then on the day the yearbooks, like when the yearbooks come out, people could come to us and we would silk screen like a good drawing on it.
Yeah.
Like we silk screened out like his drawing. I remember that, like we oranged out it. And on the back of it, we had this, our cool dragons and our cool shit. So like art for me was this sort of mechanism to, subvert any sort of, thing that was telling me I had to conform or I had to do something a certain way. And I still see it that way. Like, I mean, I think our job is to be antagonists. So that's like at that moment, I think maybe that is the seminal moment. Is like when we sort of launched a coup against the yearbook committee. That's when I was like, okay, like, and this was probably my freshman year of high school.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, okay, 4 years in sort of class, and the military's kind of going to the wayside, and I'll go to college and instead of going to the Navy or the Marine Corps. So that's my art thing.
So then you went to college at UT?
Yep, University of Tennessee. State school. It was close by. It was in the town that I grew up in, or close to the town I grew up in. University of Tennessee was mind-blowing, life-altering, of course. I had a great undergraduate experience. It was a big school, so I was immediately thrown into a much bigger world. Living in rural Tennessee, it's a pretty small town, and Tennessee in general, and kind of Appalachian culture. I don't claim Southern culture, by the way. I'm like Appalachian is its own distinct thing within Southern culture, right?
Yeah.
And I think, though I didn't get, kicked out of the mountains with running my moonshine still or anything like that. I do think there's a sort of spirit, an Appalachian spirit that is sort of well embedded in my mindset, and it has a lot to do with resiliency and self-sufficiency and autonomy, not being subject to like that idea of being subject to anything is that just don't sit right. So University of Tennessee's in Knoxville. It was for me, like a big school, lots and lots of people, and I really enjoyed being kind of lost in the crowd. I mean, and I still to this day, like I like being in a crowd, but not having to necessarily be the center of attention and just kind of watching the phenomena of it all. But I had the art department was fantastic. It was in a cool building. The library on the campus was unbelievable. I lived in the dorms. I mean, I had the full sort of normal college experience, and it was great. I went into painting, of course, and Remy will probably say something about this, like, no one's a painter, and that's true. I was, am still whatever. I'm gonna make art, but now I've evolved into what I see as the sort of highest form of artist, and which is a sculptor. Like we were the sort of apex predators on the food chain in my mind, like, and I love saying stuff like that and like poking fun at students and things. And it's like, it's all right, but you can't walk around it. You can't. You don't have to share space with it. But I had a really, really good painting instructor, and I was in the painting department. His name was Michael Brocky, and he was a Chicago guy, and he was very well versed in continental philosophy, and the stuff at that time was signs, signifier, semantics kind of stuff. And I was just eating that shit up. I was impressed with him. He seemed smart. I wanted to be smart. I didn't see myself as being very smart because I couldn't fucking read, so I was trying to be smart. And he just embodied all. Now he was, snob and arrogant and conceited, all that kind of stuff too. But he just introduced me to a world of thinking, ways of thinking about things that was really important. One of the things that I remember, probably my first painting class, I'd been making this like Bob Ross painting, right? And mountains, and I got my fan brush and all that kind of stuff. And we put our shit up in the classroom, and we all hang our things up on the wall. And Mike walks in, he's like, take everything down. Put all this out in the hallway. And okay, and walk out in the hallway, and we put our stuff out in the hallway. And he walks down the hall and he goes, I want to see this and this and this, not that, not that, not that, this, not that, and I didn't get, like, he didn't point, I want to see Noah's painting. And that really, like, that didn't sit right with me, so he curated this exhibition of around ideas that he wanted to talk about. And I didn't know that at the time and what he was doing. But the consequence of that is I was like, all right, fuck you, motherfucker. I didn't get on the wall. I'm going to come back with like 8 paintings next time. Cause I'm going to play a numbers game. And I did, and he did the same thing, the second critique, I got something on the wall, the second critique, just, by default or whatever. But that sort of really hit home with me that, this isn't an entitlement. This is something that we're choosing to do. It's something that is difficult, and it has a rigor attached to it. It is something that you need to be thoughtful about. And, Bob Ross painting of happy little clouds and trees just ain't going to cut it, and that hit home really quick, The other thing that hit home with me really quickly with him was critiquing and talking about art. I mean, he was serious about it, and he was saying stuff that, I did not have the vocabulary, to even comprehend what he was talking about when he curated this exhibition of our artwork, and so I remember kind of going in class, and he would say a word, and it was like, semiotics, right? Whatever, just make up some fancy word. And I would say, I'm not afraid to challenge an authority, like I'm like, even then I was like, I'm here to do this and I'm serious about it. So if I don't know something, I'm going to learn it by asking about it. Explain it to me. Tell me what this is. And he said, these words. And I was like, Mike, what's this mean? He goes, look it up. And I was like, oh, and that just didn't sit right with me, right? I'm like, fuck you. So I go out and I get my dictionary. And this is something that my dad did to me too. Also, my parents, like when I would ask them about something, they would say, I don't know, go look it up, because that was go get our little Webster's dictionary and look it up, And they weren't being dismissive. They were busy and trying to support us, and they didn't know themselves. So they're like, go look it up, right?
Yeah.
Sort of ashamed of that. So the next critique comes along, and Mike's using this big, vocabulary, and he says, I'm like, Mike, what's this mean? And he goes, go look it up. And I'm like, hey, here's my dictionary. Look, your word's not in my dictionary. He goes, better dictionary. And I'm like, man, this guy's an asshole. But again, one of those things. So by the time it started happening, it evolved. Like I proved I was serious and working hard to sort of learn this stuff. And I walked in with a big ass, Oxford English dictionary in class just to be kind of like a jackass, like in critique. I did this. I walked in with this big dictionary.
Yeah.
And everybody sets up, and our paintings are up, and everybody's waiting for Mike to come in. He comes in, and I pull my dictionary out, and I just thump, and I throw it on the ground and make this big echo in the classroom, and it was fun, I really enjoyed that antagonism and that fight in a way. So that was important to me, like the painting stuff and sort of learning how to talk about art and how to think about things, or ways of thinking about things. It really it was drove home for me that way. Wow, that's a long story, but
Well, but I think it has a lot of important points that could be relevant to many different people's experiences. Whether they had a professor like that challenged them, or they didn't, or and I mean, I feel like he opened the door to you, because he was like, look it up. He challenged you and then challenged you again, get a better dictionary. And then when you show up with the dictionary, because you're in the moment, I need to know, for the context of this critique and what we're talking about, what is that word that you just used? And then he challenges you to look it up. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to bring my dictionary so that I can look it up in the moment. Like, I think that he like, not like he asked for it, but
No, he was educating me.
Yeah.
And the lesson there is education's in your own hands.
Yeah.
Like, if you want it, pursue it. Go get it. Our instructors, to be an instructor, like, they're there to facilitate it.
Yeah.
They're not there to sort of bestow it upon you, from on high. No, they're working professionals who have a perspective, who have experience and expertise, and their job is to share that with us. And some people are nice and coddly and hold your hand, yes, darling and baby, and you're special. And that didn't sit right with me, because I'm like, whatever, I mean, it was a sport in my family to antagonize one another, so it's like, just poking the fun and always kind of like trying to get one over on somebody. That was just normal,
Yeah.
And it didn't feel, and I don't think it was dysfunctional or malicious, probably teetered on it every now and then, but it was like a sport,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing about that, was like, I really learned in my first few years of college at UT that, if I want this is for me to go get. And that's something that was always true. I mean, I'm sure that was a characteristic I had. I wanted to kayak, so I went out and I bought a kayak,
Mm-hmm.
and a pawn shop, and I learned how to kayak. And I somehow ended up in like middle school or junior high school and then middle school. So I never got to be top dog in either. But I did a lot of outdoorsy stuff, and because of the Sea Cadets and the military things, and wanting to be Rambo, wanting to be a ninja, and wanting to be special forces. So I learned how to rappel because we went on this outward bound experience. Like, all my friends were derelicts, they all got in trouble. And I never got in trouble, really, because, like, I'm like, y'all are gonna get in trouble. I'm right there with you. And then right at the moment, whenever it's going to like really go bad, I'm like, I'm out. You know, like, that's kind of the way it was. And but so all my friends were getting in trouble and having to go on this outward bound thing at
Yeah.
my they had. You know, it was like a, you know, go in the woods and hike and, you know, read a compass, and you have to rappel and you have to rely on each other, and then you talk in the evenings about, you know, your life experience or whatever. And they were going on these things, and I was jealous.
Yeah.
Like I want to go rappelling in the mountains, you know, and I didn't necessarily get in trouble to do it, but I talked to the teachers that were running it. I'm like, can I do this? And they're like, yeah, okay, you know. And so I ended up being kind of a counselor, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
outward one thing. And the point of that was like I've always gotten myself into these positions where I want to do something, you know, and I could just go do it because my family and my parents didn't sort of control my time. If I wanted to do something, I just went and did it.
Yeah.
You know, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. I mean, they didn't know what I was doing half of the time, you know.
Yeah.
As long as I was all right.
Yeah.
But that played into my education. Like that once I got to UT, that lesson was really still being put out there.
Yeah.
You know, if you want it, you go get it.
Yeah. And that's a valuable thing, I think, to have, especially when you get interested in iron casting, but there's no iron casting at your university. How do you go out and get it? So I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I know a little bit more of the story, but how did you get introduced to iron?
Through Allison.
Okay.
I was a painting major, and I did the 5-year program because of my first year, you know, I didn't do well my first year of college. Fine, but didn't do well. I had a roommate who took this foundry class, and I hadn't taken any. It was odd too, thinking about it now. I was like, well, why wouldn't I have gone right into sculpture? Like, why did I go into painting? You know, but that was the thing that's like, oh, you're a painter. An artist equals painter, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my school didn't have any sculpture stuff, so excuse me. But I had this roommate who took a foundry class, and he was trying to explain the mold making process and the negative and the backwards and forwards, and I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, it was really foreign concept. But he had cast these painting tubes, like tubes of oil paint out of bronze. It's kind of a cliche. I'm like, well, that's cool. So I registered for a painting class, and I don't think I was actually
Wait, you registered for a painting class?
Foundry class, metal casting class in sculpture. That was like my 3D design class. I did have 3D design, which I liked. I liked the shop. Graduate students taught it, and I registered for the foundry class, and I wasn't in the class. Like I didn't get in. I don't think Allison would remember this story better than me. She's got a much better memory than I do. I invent shit. So, but I remember going into class, and like this dark-haired, dark-eyed woman who's just really kind of intimidating. You know, Allison is an intense personality, and I said, you know, she goes through the roster and is like, well, who's in here that's not on your name didn't call out? And I'm like, me. And I think I had registered, and I thought I was in the class. And she goes, well, who are you? And I said, Noah Kirby. And she goes, you're not in my class. Like, the hell? You know, like, what do you mean I'm not in your class? And so like I guess somebody dropped out, or I was on the wait list or whatever. Anyhow, I got in the class, and that was like you know, being Allison's student. I mean, I worked for that A, man. But it was, you know, Allison's like, she's all in. You know, she's always all in, and that just impressed the hell out of me. You know, it's like I've never seen somebody work so hard or give so much. You know, I'm gonna choke up, but she's just impressive, right? And she's honest, and she's earnest, and like these were all the characteristics that I just admired. You know, and she wasn't playing games like, you know, Mike Rocky and my painting people. Like, you know, painters, like we sat around and we came up with these little games, the way to decode our paintings and blah, 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 and be clever and everything. And Allison was just like, no, it's this. It's not. It is, And then you have to work your ass off to make this thing happen that could fail in a moment. At any given moment, everything could fail. So she was teaching standard, and it was standard investment, bronze and aluminum, no iron. And I was just like everybody else. The moment you see it, it's so right. It's like taking an idea and a thing or something that could be, imagining it, making it into something, and then transforming it radically through this incredibly energetic, phenomenal process that there are just so many variables, and it embodies everything about like all of the natural phenomena of our world, and the metals and the clay and the earth and the wind and the water, like all of that stuff. It's just about manifesting an idea as a tangible thing, and that just seated really well with me. This sort of making it this tangible thing. So that was like casting, but the iron casting part came because of Leanne and Jimbo. Allison brought Leanne and Jimbo up to do a sand mold workshop, and we did parted molds. And I was making a bunch of dildos,
Yeah.
And they were awesome, and they were another sort of pair of people who were just forces of nature,
Yeah.
That's the Noah Viking.
Yeah.
So we did sand molds, and we cast them in bronze or aluminum, but then they were going to host this iron pour. And Allison, I think, had gone to one in Kentucky in her first year of grad school, and Jim and was hosting one at UGA, and it was early ones. It was 94, 96, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so we went down, and that really sealed the deal. Like, Allison took me and a couple other people to UGA, and we saw this thing, and it was just chaos. It was a beautiful chaos. Like, it was
it probably was chaos back then. I think, from what I've heard, it was still a lot being figured out then.
Yeah, but it was beautiful, and it was just this sort of like all those metaphors and analogies, sort of like the crucible of creation and the fires. Like, it was that, and it was strenuous, and everybody was working, and it was just it was really powerful. So at that moment, and that's where I met, I think the first ladle of iron I ever poured was with Matt Wicker. Like, Matt Wicker was a grad student at Georgia State, and Biz was in grad school at UGA. And those are the first two people that I put iron with Allison. And then
and
it was
you're still best friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're those two in particular are really, like, Jim and Leanne are really important to us. We lived, after Allison and I started dating, we lived in Leanne and Jim's building in Lonsdale, before Spivey. This is before Spivey. Spivey and I never really overlapped at UT. David Jones. So yeah, that was my first iron pour, was a UGA iron pour. We had these silver suits that we took down there, and I drew a screw on all the legs. Like, it was the UTK big orange screw was the joke going around. So all of our silver suits had a little screw on them somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that was it. And then, but UT didn't have iron. I mean, Dennis Peacock was the lead instructor, the sculpture professor there. He was a fabricator. He's a kind of that generation coming out of Iowa, in the 60s, that got their jobs and sculpture jobs, and large outdoor fabricated steel stuff. Grant was in undergrad just in front of me. Durant worked for Dennis Peacock in his studio, and I ended up working with Durant and for Dennis, and on a couple of big projects that Leanne was sort of coordinating, because Leanne had been the director of the sculpture tour at the university, and it was a pretty robust program, bringing in all these artists. Skip Van Houten came in and Isaac was a kid, like a baby. And I remember Skip, and I don't know Skip that well. We know him, but Grant's closer, I think. But I was just impressed with all of these people. Like I was, I had dyed my hair blue, and the sculpture tour was going on, and I walked up this like blue haired kid going, "Hey, can I help out?" And let's lift all this heavy shit. And like Skip had showed up with this big top, this big turned concrete top, and with steel frames on it and everything, and it was really beautiful. And I remember like this little kid just crawling underneath it, like screwing in these, bolts to bolt this big sculpture down. And it was probably, 7 or 8 years old. And I'm like, I want to be that kid, So I, worked with the sculpture tour, and but that's how, like, Leanne was there before me, and I think she got Allison at UT. Allison and I weren't really dating at that point, but I had taken her foundry class. I got involved with the sculpture tour. Then once we started dating after that, I really sort of committed to sculpture, and she graduated. I stayed on. There you
go. And then what happened?
And then what happened? At that time, I had already kind of decided, I think, that like college was for me. I was serious about this. I think that once I moved into sculpture, like I realized I'm not like I want to be an artist, and I'd gone to New York, and we had UT had a really great visiting artist program. And like I had in the 90s, Cheryl Donegan was there. And I mean, she's like a hardcore performance video artist who was just awesome. And she was one of my video art, performance instructors. Julia Jaquette was there, another just like badass, and I really admired these women and these people, but they were painters and they were New York people, and so I went up to New York and looked at it, and I was like, I don't know, man, I'm not, this ain't me. And sculpture was really kicking in kind of hard, and I mean, I could just work and be happy more often than not. Like if nothing comes of it, I can be happy or be content. And that sculpture was taking over, was displacing the painting. I like the talking about art, like the painting, the talking part. That was the thing that's kind of like lacking, I thought, in the sculpture. Like I like the talk, but I didn't like the production. It was all this, and none of this. And you go down to sculpture, and it's like, that Hard to Handle, that song? Pretty little thing, give me light you can, because baby, I'm hard to handle.
Yeah.
I like that song. I like the Black Crowes version, but I really like the Otis Redding version, because the song's called Hard to Handle, right? So
yeah,
the phrases that I talk about a lot to my students is like, actions speak louder than words, right? You're a person of your actions, and actions speak louder than words. And I'm a man of great experience. I've got what you want, pretty little thing on light your candle, so this idea of like, you put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
That was, so I was serious. I had sort of gotten myself into these kind of like pseudo teaching things. Remy was in grad school, my 5th year of undergrad, I think. And he and I actually taught a class together. Like I was his teaching assistant as an undergrad when he was teaching welding and fabrication. It's fairly unusual. So somehow I got myself into these like leadership roles, or I will do things. If you want me to do something, I'll do it, or try to make it happen. So I was going to apply to grad schools, and I decided like I want to teach, and so you have to have a master's degree, and I wanted to teach. And so I was applying to grad schools at the end of undergrad. And I remember real clearly talking to my instructors, and I applied to University of Chicago Circle because Mike Brocky recommended that, and there was no way in hell I was going to get into that program. I applied to the University of Washington in Washington State. I think Norm Taylor was there, and he was an iron person, but he was friends with Dennis, my sculpture instructor. And SIUE and SIUC were both on my list, but I didn't apply to them. and I'll talk about that in a second. But there was Washington University was on the list somehow, got brought up because somebody, Jen Odom, I think, had gone to WashU from University of Tennessee, and so it was known, and Jack Cron had gone there. So WashU was kind of known as a sculpture school and a teacher school. Like you could go there and you could sort of learn how to teach. And so I applied there. I withdrew or did not submit my SIUE and SIUE UC applications because I chickened out. Like I was scared. I didn't think my sculpture would cut it. So I just I wimped out on that one. But I got into WashU and got a full ride, and so I was sort of graduate school bound. Alice and I had started dating, and actually we graduated and we got married, and we got married in a fever hotter than a pepper sprout, right? We got married in July. I got into grad school. We got married in July in Canada because she's Canadian, and crossed the border illegally back into the States, technically illegally.
Yeah.
Packed up the house at Leanne's, the pinball factory, not the pinball factory, but the grocery store. Loaded a U-Haul up, moved to St. Louis. We had gotten an apartment lined up through a friend of ours who was a sculpture tour. After Leanne left, Monica Tomachek took over the sculpture tour, and she's from here. And so she hooked us up with somebody who had an apartment, and I was going to pay rent on the apartment by renovating it. So it was like a shell of an apartment, but we could afford it. We moved here. Allison had gotten a sabbatical replacement teaching position at Southern Miss for Skip. So we packed our shit up, moved here, moved into this, shell of an apartment, and then put Allison on a bus to go back to Tennessee to get the car so that she could drive to Mississippi to go teach. So we got married, moved, and separated all within the first 4 months of our, our marriage. And I started graduate school.
Wow.
So it's like a cliche, really.
I mean, that's one heck of a bingo card. You think about it.
Allison had a 500 millimeter lens for a camera, and we went to the pawn shop in St. Louis and pawned the lens so that we could buy groceries. I mean, it's like a total grad school cliche, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, here's another one.
Yeah, I was there for that one.
Oh.
I made a YouTube video about how that was made. Would they cast the? Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it for a second. So
I like the Carbondale.
So Southern Illinois University Carbondale, they had I think that they routed out of fiber, masonite, or not masonite. What is it? MDF.
Yeah.
They routed out that, and then somebody rammed it in sand, and then we poured it at the iron pour, and then as soon as it was cool enough, they were inking it and printing shirts right there.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's really super fun.
Where I think we met Jam and Danny. Jam was in grad school.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so you're at WashU.
Yeah. And my grad school experience was not like my undergrad experience. There was a lot of transformation and a lot of new things in undergrad. My whole world changed. Mm-hmm. Moved to St. Louis, and my whole world changed again. It was I guess the sort of stratification of class really stood out. I mean, right off the bat, having been a kid who lived in subsidized housing, you realize there's one way into the neighborhood and one way out, and that's structurally designed, right? That's designed to control people. And certainly those people, poor people, Black people, whatever, anybody that wants to get control, it's there's a structural mechanism for that. And that stood out to me at St. Louis. The first thing I noticed is one-way streets, do not enter streets, one way in, one way out. It's attached to the City Beautiful movement and this idea of sort of, it's a utopian notion about building better spaces for people, but what it really structurally turns into is like, how do you control a population?
Mm-hmm.
And that stood out to me in St. Louis when we moved here. And WashU is a very affluent school. I was not a very affluent person. I had a full fellowship, to go to school. I was working, like I immediately got a job when we moved here. I'm renovating a house that we're living in. I'm never around like my colleagues who had, they were living closer to campus and they had time, and I just didn't feel comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was, I got the opportunity to teach when I was in grad school because I was real clear, like, this is what I want to do. I want to teach, and I want to be a kind of a catalyst, or a force multiplier for people, and I think that speaks to this idea of service. Like the military thing was like being in service of an idea of a country, right? And these American ideas are important to me. And this is like the casting thing. The iron casting thing is a pretty American kind of thing. So I was kind of a patriotic person, and I believe in the ideals, um, and wanted to sort of be of service somehow. And so teaching was a way, like, I felt I could be like of service to others. So I was in grad school. I remember my first semester or first year of grad school, I said, I want to go to this thing, this SLOS conference, this iron casting conference. I'd been to two UGA pours, one like one of the early ones with Jim, and then I think another one it was off campus. It was this big covered area. It was a big iron pour, anyhow.
Okay.
And I wanted to do this, and like I had got a taste of this community. Allison's in Mississippi and I'm alone and I want to, I'm working all the time and trying to figure out how to make art. And, the art that I was trying to do in grad school was like any construction site I could find that was close to campus. Like I would go jump the fence, it sounds familiar, right?
Yep.
And I would like collect the asphalt, like the busted up pieces of asphalt. And it was, I don't know what I was trying to do necessarily. It was something to do with labor and work, but I would jump the fence and I would just start toting all this asphalt and all this construction debris back to my studio, and I would pile it up, and take a picture of it and then take it all back. This like this absurd, activity really. And it was practical because I couldn't afford to do anything or buy anything. And the place wasn't really a sort of like come build, welded steel sculpture kind of place. So I had to find my way through it. But I said, I want to go to this conference and I could go down and I could represent the school. And there's an oblique history here to, people who do this. And I think the conference was $25. The registration was $25. And I remember asking the chair of the department, it's like, can you sponsor me to go to this? I'll find a way to sleep or whatever. And he said, no, and again, it didn't sit right with me. There's a theme developing here. So I was like, I'm going anyways, and that really set the tone for sort of my time. I'm surprised they let me teach in a lot of ways. But I mean, I go to SLOS and it was SLOS and it was a real amazing thing. There's just all this stuff going on, all this energy going on. Came back and decided that I wanted to build a furnace, and I talked the ceramics tech at WashU at the time, and instructor, his name was Albert Farr, an amazing artist. This dude's he's a rock star, super cool, very easy to get along with, very energetic. He's built like a fire plug. Like he's a judo guy. He's like an Olympic judo person. But he and I got along really well. He was like one of my like real friends. And so I said, hey, can I like pitch a class and then you sponsor me? And I'd already done I didn't have to do any art history because I had extra art history. So I really just got to be in the studio. And I said, I want to do this class called Ceramics Technologies, and I want to build a furnace and then run this furnace. And I need a faculty sponsor. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. He was building like a glory hole for glass blowing, and like it worked out nicely. I got my hands on a book and a bunch of drawings. I think I had Cliff Prokoff, drawing, and called the slots thing and said, hey, how do you build this thing? And nobody around me is doing it. I didn't know at SIUE at that time. I did meet them at Sloss, I think, and then I went to an iron pour at Edwardsville. That when Kevin Shum was coming out of grad school and he was doing his big sort of tour, I went to an iron pour there when Kevin Shum was pouring at SIUE. I think Andrew Marsh and Matt Toole were there at that time too. So we were kind of parallels in school and close to one another, but we really didn't cross paths.
No, nobody crosses the river. You and I both know that.
No, it's stupid, right? It's another one of those sort of like structural segregation things.
Yeah.
The cultural thing. Okay, so I'm rambling a little bit, but
no, you're not rambling. You're telling us.
And I really enjoyed it. Like, I like teaching, helping somebody level up or help them like see where they're at and try to give them opportunities to get them to do more of what they want to do. That was important. And I don't know that I'm a particularly good teacher. Like Allison's a good teacher.
She is a good teacher.
She's amazing, right? Like she plans everything and she's got examples, and like only thing I got going for me is a big mouth. Like I can
I'm laughing, but that's not true.
I just sort of like coerce people into doing things, and if you want to do something, I'm going to coerce you into, like Aaron and Abigail from before, like they want to do it, and I'm going to coerce them into doing something,
Yeah.
But I think that's a Mike Brock. That's also like if you want it, you take it, and if somebody sees that you want it, somebody who supports you, a mentor or a faculty member, like they're going to help you do what you want to do. And that's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be somebody who helped people do what they want to do, probably more than being like a famous artist, and that's back to that service thing. So when I was in grad school, it was a 2-year program. I wanted to get in, I wanted to get out, I wanted to teach. I got to be instructor of record for Foundry class. So like I was stealing all of Allison's class notes, and Allison, here's my big secret. Like I don't have to research because Allison's already done it. Like, hey, can I have your research? I'm like, yeah, sure. Here's my worksheet, and here's my schedule. And I'm like, wow, great. So I was instructor of record for Foundry at WashU, and that exiting grad school, I was like, okay, I don't want to be part of this game. I don't want to be part of these institutions. I don't want to be part of this this system, and I'll go. I guess I had already started working for City Museum to sort of backpedal. Like that was my graduate school education, was working for the artist Bob Castley at City Museum. That's what I met some nice people in grad school and some good people, but my education was City Museum and working for Bob. And you were like, for him, he was a force of nature, and you were like a finger on his hand. That's the way I always saw it. So the way that happened was I had done this sort of ceramic technology class, is what I call it, to build this cupola furnace. And I decided to build a 6-inch cupola, because that made sense, and I could run it by myself, and me and Allison could run it, and it's small and it's easy to run, and it's like the worst decision ever, right?
Right.
Like,
can we just have a sidebar and just take a moment to like, everybody thinks that they want a small furnace at the beginning.
That you can't run them. I mean, they're just. I mean, you can, and but
they do fine.
Like your margins go down on everything. Like the math, like once you get closer, like your tolerances, right? Like as you get bigger and bigger, your tolerances also get bigger and bigger. Which means your margin of error gets bigger and bigger. So you go from, okay, my piece has to be a 1/2 inch by a 1/2 inch in order to melt, relative to the diameter of the blah blah blah, of the furnace, on a 6-inch furnace to, okay, it's basically Dorito size.
Yeah.
And then you get bigger. It's like, okay, like just throw the sink in there,
Yep.
And it is funny, but I have made every mistake that you could think of making, trying to do this sort of on our own and by calling Matt and Biz and saying, hey, how did you do this? And what's this? And what's this ratio? And trying to interpret these drawings, that people made. And it's so much easier if you have somebody that's doing it close to you, and that's one of the things for us. Allison and I never really had people close to us that were doing this. So we've always felt like we're kind of outliers, and we're trying to figure it out on our own so that we can bring people close to us,
Yeah.
Because we went to these things and we saw it's like, this is a powerful thing. And these are powerful people, and they're characters, and they're strong personalities. I love a strong personality, and everybody's impressive, everybody's impressive.
Absolutely.
I'm just dumbfounded by it. So I did the ceramic technology thing, building this tiny little cupola, and I remember I ran it in the grad studios at WashU were in this apartment complex.
Yeah.
And I had built this furnace, and I said, okay, I'm going to run it right now. And I got it going, and I realized, it's like 2:30 in the morning, right? And I'm trying to run this thing inside, and I really didn't know what I was doing, and I kind of got scared and sort of chickened out, right? So I shut the blower, the vacuum, the shop vac off for the blower, and then I realized, all this shit is going to turn solid on the inside. So I started banging on it, and it's 3 a.m. and I'm driving sledgehammers, hitting this thing, and the cops show up, and the neighbors got all the people in the apartment got all mad, and some dude walked in on me in the studio, and I'm standing there with a sledgehammer going who are you? He's like, stop making all that noise. I'm like, you're gonna get hit in the face with a sledgehammer. So I made a spectacle of myself, wimped out on the furnace, and but so we had this thing later on. I got in a little bit of trouble, not a lot. I fought my way out of it. But I was working at this bar, and everybody said, go to City Museum, go to this place. This is crazy. You'll love it. And I did finally. I was like, holy Christ. It's there's not much like it in this country, this special place. And it's a 10-story building that is nothing but kind of one creative person's vision for making. And I said, I don't ascribe to the notion of creative genius, but force of nature and creative will, that was Bob Castley. If he wanted to do it, he did it, and that was impressive. So I tried to meet this guy, and he's mercurial, and he's always coming and going, and I could never catch him. And finally, I crossed paths with him. It seemed this is showing up at City Museum every day for 3 weeks trying to catch this dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's Bigfoot or something he was just here, he's gone, he's not real. Finally crossed paths with him, and I said, hey, can I do something here? I've got this iron casting furnace. Why don't you let me cast iron on the weekends at City Museum, and me and Allison could come do it? And he's like, he kind of mumbles when he talks. And so I got an okay to do that, but the deal was we had to do it every weekend for a summer in St. Louis, after my first year of grad school. So every weekend that summer, Allison and I took this little 6-inch cupola publicly, having never really run it, and went out and ran it in the public. And every weekend it would freeze up, and we would have to hammer everything out. We'd pour little scratch tiles. I had convinced an undergrad student who was actually at the last SLOS, Taylor Hokinson, to sort of be our intern. I learned a lot having to sort of manage people, and it was awesome. So the 3 of us would go to City Museum every weekend, run this furnace until it froze up, because it didn't have a slag hole on it and had a tiny little tap hole on it, and it was a 6-inch furnace, and it was just a flustercluck, right?
Yeah.
But we went out there and we screwed up publicly every weekend, for 3 months. And one weekend, and Bob never showed up once, right, the whole time. And one one day he just happens to show up. He's like, wow, this is a lot of work. I'm like, yeah, it is. Well, why don't you just stop doing that and come work on my crew? And like that was like flattered, right? And so like I immediately started working for him while I was in grad school. And like my first job was to weld the bus onto the corner of a building.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was where it was at. And it was sort of keys to the city, and my welding skills went through the roof. I mean, I'm a certified blah 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 structural welder, blah blah blah. But it was very much like you walk in the morning and there's a line on the ground and you'd like build a wall on that, and you walk in the next morning and there's like squiggled out parts and move it here and move it there, and so you cut it off and redo it. And but the great thing about it was I had unfettered access to anything that he had. Like, so for my thesis year, I had his shop, I had his space, his scale of materials. Like that scale appeals to me. This sort of like large scale architectural building sort of scale. Like all my family are construction workers, and I grew up around commercial construction, so like building at that scale feels good. So it was great. I mean, it was really generous to sort of have access to this. I got like I don't remember exactly how it happened, but like Andrew Marsh came over and was working. I think David Lobdell tells a story about like meeting me at City Museum. And that same sort of second year of grad school, Alice and I went to Iron Tribe because of Matt and Biz. Hey, why don't you come to New Mexico and meet this guy David Lobdell and go to this, and that Sloss got us going, but there were things I didn't, there's a lot of ego, and I was insecure, and so like it sat well, but there were things I didn't like. Jimbo and Leanne was really great, but when I went to New Mexico, we were like, okay, this is our people. Like we really, the thing, I'm not one to ascribe to the cult of personality. And that's one of the things I don't like about some of this stuff, is like this sort of like super personalities. Like, this is the messiah of iron casting or whatever. And Lobdell was just he's kind of like a guru, it's like you just want to be around him. You want to be in his place. You're welcomed to be there. And if you want to work, and the thing he says about contributing, that really hits hard with me, and it's like, if you want to contribute, you can contribute, and here you go. You want to do this, you want to hold a shovel, you want to hold some iron, you want to, move molds, you want to work on like whatever, Yeah. So we went to Iron Tribe and that one, and like from that moment, that was really, like we really felt like we found our people there. Allison talks a lot about sort of finding your people, and that's our kind of peoples,
Yeah.
And he's the sort of, I think Tom Fox wrote an article one time or something about talking about David as being a sort of the magnetic core around which we all rotate,
Yeah.
And he's done so much for so many people. It's really fortunate to know him.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that I went to Iron Tribe for the first time this year. And it was fantastic. And it is like, I can totally second you on that. It's a different level of hospitality, and everything is, I don't know, like really relaxed and really just genuinely open. Yeah. There's something about that conference that it's different.
Well, I think there's, I mean, we can talk about this a little in our sort of how everything else worked out, but this idea of sort of contributing and being sort of felt that you can contribute,
Yes,
whatever way that you can. There's something about like the Western group, look how thick I'm getting.
yes,
Is that like everybody's dispersed, like you're really far apart, and so there's not this sort of place where everybody's concentrated and close together. Like in the South, everything's like in your face, everything's close together, and everything's, and you have like Sloss is this mecca, right? You know, go there, but there's just a lot of people there that are there all the time and working their butts off all the time, and that's great. It really
Yeah.
is great. It's like I got to go do a summer artist in residency at Sloss and teach blacksmithing for the summer youth, and that was a fantastic experience for me. Remy was there, Joe McCreary was there, Julie Ward was there, Heather Spencer Holmes was there. I mean, like those folks were like they helped me out a lot, you know, and I really appreciate it. But there's something about like the West because everybody's dispersed. Like you're not up in each other's shit all the time.
Yeah.
You're away, and then you come together to make things happen, and then you go away. So you get to kind of, it's like breathing, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's the way Iron Tribe kind of felt. You know, I met Toby. I mean, like the first time I saw Toby was in David Lobdell and Shireen's house. A whole bunch of people sitting there, and I think Tobin and Steven had airsoft guns and playing guns, and I think Toby already knew them. So Toby was running around like shooting airsoft guns, and I wanted to do that so bad I couldn't see straight. I was intimidated by this big dude. Like Toby's like
He's tall.
tall, you know, and he's and he's strong personality, you know, and
Loud, deep, loud voice.
you know, he's gonna make fun of you if you know, like you get the other thing about this sort of group of folks is like you got to be on your game, you know, like you say something, it's going to get picked up, you know, and it's and that's part of the fun of it and the greatness of it, you know. But I think that's where we met Dan Hunt also at that same one, and Dan Hunt was another one who was really sort of brought us into the fold with his friends and neighbors pours. You know, he gave Allison and I a show, and we went out to his iron pourers, and of course our truck broke down and all this kind of stuff, you know, and so I think that sort of those folks really like were very welcoming to us. Okay, so you know that was where are we at now? Post grad school, City Museum. I'm pouring, and our furnaces are screwing up every weekend. It's a 6-inch furnace. I wasn't going to teach, but I stayed in St. Louis and was working for Bob Castley. And I had kind of like this 5-year plan to like, I'm gonna start my own business. I'm gonna, you know, do fabrication stuff because I'm a sculptor. I've got skills, you know, and I've always wanted to be a person who had skills, who could do stuff, who didn't need to rely on other people for things, you know, and that's like, again, another characteristic of this. It's funny, this community of people like don't need anybody. Like everybody is very capable.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need anybody, but everybody helps everybody. You know, it's weird. It's a fantastic thing. You know, it's like I know everybody I know is better at what I can do than me. You know, in my mind, and everybody is super capable, and everybody I can learn from. You know, and to just be in that sort of fray is it's enormously empowering. You know, like, you know that you can be supported to do something, to learn something. It's comfortable to fail, you know, and you know somebody's got the ladle, you know somebody's got your back, you know somebody's got their hand on you, is going to put you in the right spot, you know, and everybody's anonymous too. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but they got me, you know. So that was City Museum, and Castley crew was like that. Being part of a crew is really kind of cool, and that's sort of the Castley boys, the Cowboys, like that was you were tight like that. But I got a call to come teach for one of the instructors at WashU was that had surgery or something, and they needed an instructor, and so I started teaching, and then I realized like I really like this, you know, and I sort of stayed there. After that, I pitched a blacksmithing class, which, you know, I'm surprised it went, but like I stayed there for a long time, and it's always been this kind of like weird dissonant experience for me.
Yeah,
I like the students. I hate institutions, and I really abhor you know, authority and these kinds of things. But you know, it's a life, and it's just been really good. Like the teaching thing.
So you went to your first Iron Tribe, and then you came back, and did that inform
My artwork?
Or
No, I don't make very much, you know. I'm sort of project oriented, and it's the process. Like I'm totally enamored with the process, and I like the sort of cacophony of the chaos of the moment and being in that chaos and navigating it. You know, like it's like that's just what needs to happen. Where do you need to be? Where can I be most useful? Like that sort of figuring out how to navigate that really appeals to me. The best way to sort of learn how to do something is to volunteer to do it, or to put yourself on the line, you know, to be obligated to somebody else to do it. So I started, I guess, volunteering after I went down and did the residency at SLOS for summer youth. I was like, well, you know, I'll volunteer. I'll be on the steering committee, you know, and so I got involved with the steering committee. I really, really loved the student cupola contest. That was pretty cool. You know, I don't know. I mean, I've been on a couple of the SLOS steering committees. The iron thing for us turned into, this is a sort of segue into the 6 Mile Sculpture Works, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I've been waiting for. So no, I'm just kidding. Like I knew it was coming.
I guess my sculpture and my artwork, kind of like this sort of Shakia Booker thing, it's like you're sort of sculpting yourself every day. I like the sculpting of the potential of the scenario. You know, I don't think I make very, you know, much sculpture, very interesting sculpture necessarily. Again, Allison's the better artist than me, but like I can make some shit come together. Like I can get some stuff to where something could happen. And I went to grad school with a guy who was from Granite City and was doing art projects with an older woman there. And you know, he knew that we did the iron casting thing, and we've been going to these conferences. We've been to several things with Matt and Biz, like when Biz was in Nebraska, and we did this hellacious pour in southern Missouri that, you know, Remy was there. Like we're all throwing up on the side and everything, never ending pour. But Ron Laboret was the guy's name, and he's like, why don't you come over and meet this woman? And this is a steel town. I didn't know anything about Granite City, Illinois, and like I rolled up and I'm like, okay, this is it. This place is cool, you know, big factories and steel and all that kind of stuff. And it was still a live industry. There's BOF furnace, there's carbon arc furnace, there's cupola, like just like SLOS running every day in Granite City. And it's a, you know, working class town, not a lot of money. And I was like, well, I can bring an iron furnace here and we can do a pour. And so we did. We brought we'd built a better furnace at that point. We went over and did a demo pour and invited the Steelworkers Union and a couple of the big corporations out to see it. And they're like, this is perfect. You're doing at a small scale in the public what we do behind fences all day long in this town, and nobody knows what we do. So we became kind of like, this idea was, okay, well, let's just put together some workshops, because, you know, I've been on the steering committee for this, and we understood the sort of workshop model. So, and this is an event that's sort of a package. We can come in, we can do it, and we can exit. And that was important. That was an important thing, because at that time I'd been teaching for a while, and I started teaching the public art curriculum at WashU, and that's a really important thing to understand how to sort of gain entry into a community, to know your relationship to that community and what you have to offer and what they have to offer and need and what they want, instead of just coming in and imposing what you want, and something that's relevant. And then how do you sort of deliver, like put your money where your mouth is, what you say you can do, and then exit discreetly or properly or well. And then we can do that. Like we walked in and we did an iron pour. So we did an iron pour. That got us noticed by another corporation, America's Central Port in Granite City, Illinois, which is a port authority. And they wanted a sculpture for their sort of property. And I sort of horse traded, wheeled and dealed a scenario where I could get us a building to work in, to build this sculpture. And I could do whatever I wanted with the building. And that was sort of the genesis of 6 Mile Sculpture Works, which is Granite City is 6 miles from downtown St. Louis. So it's the 6 Mile community is what it was called.
Okay.
So
I didn't know that until right now.
Yeah, that's why it was called 6 Mile Sculpture Works. And the idea was to sort of do art that is rooted in the industrial processes that are alive and present in the community. And so I was building this big sculpture, mall art, like David said that to me one time. He's like, well, it's kind of like mall art. And then he went, I don't mean to be offensive. And I didn't take it offensive at all, but I really like to poke him on it. It's like, yeah, I'm just making mall art, whatever, but it's a skill. Like, it's design. It's a skill. And so I was making these big pieces for Granite City for the Port Authority on Route 3. We had this 5,000 square foot building that we didn't have to pay rent for, and no questions asked. And then we started hosting like conferences and doing like, ours is rough and ready. Like, it's like, look, we've got sand out the yin yang, like we didn't pay for sand. We had resin, we had safety equipment, we had Coke, SunCoke Energies here in Granite City. They loved us because their product is top notch. So we had like materials out the yin yang, no money, no cash. So we just call everybody up. It's like, okay, we've got 10,000 pounds of sand and a tandem load of Coke and all the iron you want. Becker Iron and Metal gave us iron, so you can just show up and make as much as you want, and it's $25. Like, we're not gonna like gouge you, and we don't have an institution to support. We don't have a lot of overhead, so just give it to everybody. Like, if you want it, if we've got it, you can have it. And that was kind of the 6 Mile stuff was like that, and that turned into we did that for 6 or 7 years and did several projects, and then we got kicked out of the building because it became valuable. Moved into a different building, and now we are sort of focusing on trying to get a residency established. We've established a sort of an outdoor sculpture exhibition, funding for that, and so we just did a call for that, and sculptures are going to be going up this here in a couple of weeks. A couple iron people are represented really well. I think like Kristen Tordella Williams is in this show, so big shout out there.
Yeah, her is it the elbows pieces that she cast at Sculpture Trails this past? Yeah. So I think I don't know if I have to get this footage to her, but I think I have footage of that being poured from the bull ladle, because I think I was on the chain hoist or something. And so
that's cool.
Yeah. And then afterwards we danced on the molds.
Well, yeah.
And yeah. And now it's going to be in Granite City.
Yep. Now Alice and I don't select the work. We just make the project happen. And then a group of community representative stakeholders make the selection. So we're pretty happy about that. We've got an apartment in Granite City that we have our sort of first tester artists in residence. They can sort of live there rent free for a year and do projects. And we have a service expectation in the community. So they have to help us do things, clean up sculptures, mount exhibitions, stuff. Yeah, that's kind of jumped around a little bit, but the 6 Mile Sculpture Works thing has really gotten us, access to a lot of people and put Alice and I on the map in a way. I mean, when you were coming out of grad school, Jim Lee called us up and like, okay, this person Laura is coming up and wants to do something. I think you introduced yourself to us in Hayes. And we're like, I don't know. I mean, from what I can tell, your impression is, yeah, come on, let's go. It's like, if we've got it and you need it, you can have it, if it's not something that we're working on. So just try to find a way to put more people around us that want to do this kind of stuff. Look, I'm just getting thicker and thicker.
Yeah. Which one is that? The bull?
This was West. What's West last name? Jacobs. He's in. We met him in Iron Tribe, and so the story David, I think, was talking about. It might have been the Iron Tribe about the bread truck.
Yeah.
And, that was probably my first Iron Tribe.
Get down.
That was that time frame.
Okay.
James, actually, no, it was James who was at the last slots from Ireland. It was there. Wes has a sculpture center in Great Britain that's doing this kind of stuff. So met him at an iron drive. Not that particular one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Laura, I lost track of where we are and sort of notes wise.
I mean, you were just kind of leading us through the kind of history of how 6 Mile sculpture was developed and kind of like what is it doing today. So has that residency with the apartment and the 1 year, has that started yet?
So we did like right now we have 2 people living there in the apartment as a sort of pilot tester. One of the things, like Alice and I, it's sort of an ad hoc thing. We do it when we can do it and how we can do it. So we need people with pretty specific kinds of skill sets and ability to be kind of autonomous because we're not there all the time.
Yeah.
And it really is pretty isolated. So we got the apartment. It's a nice apartment. It's really nice. Nice sort of studio next to it. We have a building on the Port Authority still. So I've renegotiated our deal with the port. Like this is me. Like I'm the spin guy, right? Like I've negotiated all these deals to get all these things so that other people could do stuff.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily do it myself.
That's okay though, because you're getting opportunities for other people that like otherwise wouldn't have those opportunities. So
yeah, I mean, like if you want to come work, I'll put you to work. I mean, that's, and I'll give you an opportunity to make work, and I'll help you do things as best I can that you probably haven't done before. So yes, we have 2 people in there right now. We're testing out how it works sort of informally. And then we're probably going to do a sort of open call / invitational, here coming in the fall or in the winter. They're leaving. So we'll put a call out this fall, and have a couple of weeks of sort of selection or a couple of months of selection to take people in the spring.
Awesome.
Good deal. It's like you have a shop with a fully equipped shop. You have an apartment rent free, and if you want to make sculpture, I've got 100,000 pounds of bridge parts from a train bridge that crossed the Mississippi River that we've got to figure out how to make sculptures out of. So we have that kind of project happening. We've got our public call for sculpture downtown happening. We've our second one this time, and we've good response from that. So we'll probably do that again. Yeah.
Awesome. So is that kind of like, have we got to where we are today?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of where we are today. Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, you start talking and you realize like I got a lot of stuff I could say. But I think where we are today is being interviewed for the podcast honor.
Okay. So then do you want to talk about maybe what you got hot on the horizon? Because I feel like we dabbled in it a little bit talking about the residency and the public art rotation thing. So
hot on the horizon. I think I've got a couple of commissions I'm working on. I've got a large project for the Port Authority I have to do. That's just sort of me. Allison and I have a pretty big show we're excited about at the Sheldon Art Center in St. Louis, which is if you know it, it's a pretty well-respected institution here in town. We have a show coming up this fall. So our summer is going to be dedicated to cranking out a lot of things. We didn't talk about artwork that much necessarily, but Alice and I I work on my stuff, she works on her stuff, and then we work on our stuff. We have this sort of third person that's kind of interesting. And so we have a show of our sort of third person collaborative work. So that's coming up this fall. That's going to be a big deal. I'm finishing up my first year as a visiting assistant professor at Webster University. In the fall at Webster, I am looking to coordinate an iron pour and an exhibition that features a lot of the Western cast iron art lines. I didn't even talk about the Western people, man.
Well, it's not too late. We're here now. So anyways,
so there's a segue.
Yeah.
the segue to the Western people is so I did SLOS steering committee a bunch of times. Allison got invited to be on board of the Western. And we have this coming. The Western people were the ones that came to the 6 mile stuff mostly, like Kobe brought all of his people and really sort of like made it happen for us. Like we don't have critical mass of people around us that are interested in, like, this is just a stupid hard amount of work, right? Like, how much work you're putting into this video and this podcast. Like that's sort of on par with the iron pours. It's just a shit ton of work,
Yeah. And they're driving, especially I remember my first 6 mile, and it was probably the fall. There's David Lobdell.
Yeah.
Lobdell. And I think that was probably the first time that I met the New Mexico crew. Was at the 6 mile. And I remember being like, you drove how many hours?
Right.
Like it's like so long. Like I had driven from, like, it sounds like peanuts, but I had driven from Athens, Georgia to Memphis for a couple of iron pours, and that's like 9 hours. And I thought that was a lot. I mean, that's a day, but it's like a 2-day drive for them to come from New Mexico to St. Louis.
Yep.
I mean, and so it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of driving to get to a lot of work to then do a lot of driving to go home.
Yeah, it is. And it's great. It's like you're just exhausted and you feel transformed at every one of them. But I guess because we were doing the 6 mile thing, Allison, we were present and we were we know those folks, and Dan Hunt and Toby, we'd been out to Hayes a bit, and Lobdell and so Allison got invited to be on the board of the Western. And that's been great. I was brought onto the board a couple of years after her, as kind of a sympathy board member, really. Like Allison's the one who's got her shit together, and again, I'm the one with the big mouth. So when we got on with the Western, it was like, the thing that I think about a lot in hearing people talk about iron pour stuff is like this idea of family and the familial connection. And I take a little issue with that. I think I might have said this to you. Like family is something that is like, it just happens.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have any choice in the matter necessarily. With this population and this activity, I mean, it's all by choice. Every single person doing this is choosing to give of themselves for someone else, and that, I mean, how much more graceful can you think of something to be than to sort of give of yourself for others? And the Western group really embodies that. And we've, people that, don't know anything about what you're doing, might not even like you, are still going to help you realize your vision. And the Western group really embodies that, as all of these groups really do. So Allison was on the board for Hayes conference. I think I came in after Scottsdale for it. So, and it's because we had a Coke supply. I mean, I think that's the only reason that they really want me. I mean, it's because I've convinced ABC Coke to give us Coke. So we're closer than Birmingham, to get Coke. So the Western does their biannual conference, as you've talked about. It goes from different locations every 2 years. It's because we don't have like an institutional location to sort of support, and we don't necessarily have programs to support. We're a lot sort of looser and more flexible in sort of how we go about doing things. And then you've got the personalities in the group, that are, they're just not pleasant to be around, honestly. It's like, I mean, who likes Toby Flores, and we've got some really great, like, Rian and Ashley and David and Ted Urin and Tom Fox Urin and Tom Fox and Lobdell and it's just a great group of people who can put something on and make things happen for others. And that's everybody there. It's always about making something happen for somebody else. Like my ego and my self-importance is never front and center in this group. And that's true for everybody. Like there ain't nobody that needs to be the most important person in the room whenever you're in the room with these people. So, and I think that's kind of the spirit of how the Western operates. So I definitely want to, appreciate being part of them and part of that. And it's transformed how I think about my art and how I think about doing things. I think, I'm sort of cultivating a performative trajectory, I think, which is interesting for me.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Spectacle. I like spectacle is the word that sort of stands out more than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's kind of I wanted to make sure to mention the Western people.
Yeah.
Out on the horizon is some shows in the fall for us. San Diego 2025 Western Conference is way on the horizon.
Yeah. We're still talking about it though. I'm putting it in every listener's ear. Like we gotta, because, and that's one thing that like, I feel like I have to start talking about in my intros and outros is the Western Conference isn't just for people that are in the West. Like you can come if you're from the East. If you're a New Englander, you can come. Well, like you can come.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you're in the South, it's like the what did Margie call it? The war of Northern aggression.
Yeah, it's
it's like there's a little bit of antagonism there, but no, like it's the Western mindset is this sort of expansive mindset is the way I see it. Like, when you're standing out west, like it's the never-ending landscape, and the never-ending mindscape. It's like your mind is just expanding, and that group I think is an expansive group of people who would really welcome in anybody. Like it's not, you don't just have to be from a Western state for sure. I mean, Alex and I are in the easternmost Western people. We're in Illinois. We aren't even west of the Mississippi River anymore. And we're still part of the group. So
yeah, because in some ways it doesn't really matter. No.
It doesn't.
But I think that that's something I have to start kind of talking about is people from all over should come to the Western Conference. And yeah, because there's something special and just so different about the conferences. And I feel like they're very relaxed and you have time to see everything. That's like one thing I really liked about the Western and Iron Tribe was I saw everything that there was to see, What is this one?
Friends and neighbors.
Yeah.
Mr. Dan Hunt.
Yeah.
Yes, you do get to see everything, and you get to sort of build relationships. Sloss is a lot. I mean, it's just a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. It's intense, and there's
a lot of people.
A lot of people, and it is wonderful. And it is, I think you said that they're like apples and oranges, it's very true. The Western is a little more casual, is you get to sort of spend more time with people. There's probably not as many people.
There's not.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
No, it's intimate. It is very intimate. Yeah.
And a lot of times we all, or at least in Vermilion, we all ate lunch together every single day.
Yep.
And that's when I met so many people that I didn't know before, just because you find somebody to eat, that somebody else is eating. And that's where I met Michael Ebling. And so then he's talking to me and then he mentions, oh yeah, well, and I do the like, where did you learn iron? And he's like, oh, I learned it from Julia Schmidt at the University of Iowa. And I was like, oh, you did? Yeah. And that for me was like a really great moment because I don't know if I had to leave to go get lunch, I probably would have done so with people I already knew.
Yep.
Which is fine. But then to be able to already know him a little bit and then go to Sloss and see him with that furnace and know what, like, the history of what that means. That was really beautiful for me.
There's a kind of a continuity there. And that's like to speak back to the familial thing, it's not a family that is inherited. It is a family that is built and cultivated.
Yeah.
And that's very much something that I think the Western is a very fertile ground for sort of cultivating those familial connections. Because it's smaller, because people are sort of like in it together, and sort of everybody can sort of jump in, catch can. We all eat together, generally, the after party or the after work, all happens together. It's just I'm getting ready to say family, but it's not the same as a family that is not one that is built. I mean, it's a construction, it's a thing that is built. Mm-hmm. And that really appeals to me, and it's not an institution that's maintained. It's a relationship that is perpetuated. That's the way I sort of see the Western.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to describe it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's good to have like the apples and oranges because you don't want every single conference to offer the same thing. No. So it's good. It's good that we have this variety. I mean, it's very convenient isn't the right word. Fortunate. It's very fortunate that our community and our movement have so many different places and different like avenues and then types of places where we can get exposed to new people or new techniques or get re-excited.
Mindsets, different locations, like all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like without iron, I don't think I would have ever gone to South Dakota or New Mexico.
Wonderful places.
They're beautiful. Right. They're beautiful.
Like, why would you go there?
Yeah. I mean, like, there's many places. I don't want to, a lot of people, when I said I was going to New Mexico, a lot of people have been to New Mexico as like a touristy thing. But I just like right now, I mean, my husband and I, like, we don't have the means to go to New Mexico for vacation, but to go for an iron port. Yeah, I can justify that. I don't know how to. It's funny. Our priorities are different, but.
Alice and I have been married we're coming up on 25 years. And, we don't go somewhere unless we go to work.
Yeah.
Like, this idea of a vacation is just like, what the hell is that? Like, let's go do something, go make something, that's like, this is like, there's a turn of phrase that I like that is about authority. Mm-hmm. The way to have authority is to author things, right? The way that's the core of the word is authorship. So, let's, instead of going and being passive about something, with nothing wrong with being passive, but go and be active and contribute and add and to author things and the places that you're going. And then on top of it, you get to share those things with other people who are trying to author things. That's real power. That's real power in our world. Creative, the ability to create, and anything that facilitates that ability to create, that gives people voices, that gives people power, and I like being around powerful people, and empowered people. And then this is a community full of that.
And that actually, what you were kind of talking about, I feel like is sort of advice like. And so I want to kind of latch onto that and continue. Well, no, do you have, because talking about authoring things is what could give you authority. And so then I feel like you could launch into some advice related to that.
A diatribe, a treatise, a manifesto. I'm all for a manifesto. Advice, I'm full of opinions. I'm really good at giving opinions, I'm really good at telling other people what I think they should be doing. I'm skeptical of advice, but there's to show my geekiness. So Dune is an important book to me. It's a good book, and there's a mantra that the people trying to manipulate. It's all about people trying to manipulate people, right? And power struggles and everything, and political. I didn't even talk about politics, but
it's not too late. I may have to change my camera battery, but
no. But I think all art, like art's a political activity by nature of the fact that it is people trying to author things and put them into the world of shared things, right? And that is about a political discourse. But the mantra that I think about all the time is fear is the mind killer, right? Fear is the little death that leads to total oblivion. And I will master my fears as I master my life, and I will let my fear run through me. And when it comes through me and I'm standing on, it is on the other side of me, I am all that is standing, right? That's something to that extent, so this idea of being fearless is something that my advice is be fearless, damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead, jump into the fray, be fearless. If you are not sort of stepping right over the edge, or if you're not right at the edge, if you're not willing to step right at that edge and to fail publicly, I mean, like I have failed publicly a lot. But if you're not willing to do that, you're holding back, and I think that this idea of being fearless is what moves you forward, is what helps you grow and transform and transcend. So I would say just cultivate fearlessness as much as you can do in everything or anything that you can do, because it will stop you at every stage. And if you recognize that being fearful is not a problem, but you let it flow into you and flow through you, and you can sort of transcend it, then you've sort of transformed the water of life. You've transcended your fearlessness. Man, that is like super like sci-fi geeky, Frank Herbert, Dune book shit.
I loved it. I feel like you were speaking to my core right there. Like, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be fearless. Am I on the edge of my, man, that spoke to my soul. That the advice part, everybody is so humble, but I can't tell you how much the advice is so important. And it really, you get something different from every single person, but it always, I mean, it always kind of can reframe a few little neurons to help you be fearless or think about the next time I'm scared, so sci-fi or not, I don't care. I think that was,
I mean, I'll avoid all my sort of Philip K. Dick references and my, I'll stay away from the George Orwell for now. But that one, that seats really well with me. Is just sort of the fearlessness. And if you want something, you pursue it. And you will find people that will help you pursue it.
And you will. I mean, I can from personal experience of doing this podcast and kind of stepping into whatever this endeavor is. And I feel like in a way, and I'm not trying to give you props, like for something that you're going to be like, oh, that's so ridiculous. But also you're old enough to know that something that happened to you in your like mid 20s, and then like later something will manifest and you'll be like, I wonder if it had anything to do with that encouragement that I got. So when I was, I don't know, like mid 20s or whatever, like out of grad school, but I'd been in St. Louis and I'd been like helping you and Allison with 6 Mile like a couple of times, a little bit. And
that's out a lot. Like teaching, like you took the sand mold stuff off of our hands, which I think we sort of like threw you like, here you go. This is like, here's a problem,
Well, but
like,
I think I talked to David about this in David Lobdell's interview. I was just so happy that somebody trusted me with something. And so I was like, yeah, I'll teach all this sand. Oh, we have this person that wants to, she never did any sand mold ever, and she wanted to do an antler.
Yeah,
And I
I've
was
heard
like,
the
I got
story, and
this.
I remember it. I was like, "Woo, better you than me."
I think that also I told somebody that I interviewed, like in an interview earlier, I don't know if I gave the specifics about it, but I was like, for how much work that I did on that stupid antler, I should have been able to keep the antler. It was like so much like parting lines and stuff, but whatever. I wonder whatever happened to that. Who knows? No, but to circle back to being serious, I think it was about the time that you and Margie were chairs of the national conference at SLOSS, and I was asking for guidance on how to get involved and things like that. And I'm not exactly sure if it was around then, but at some point you were like, Laura, if you want to make a difference, you should you should start writing critical essays about iron casters. You should start writing. And now I've never been a poor writer, but writing isn't something that necessarily gets me jazzed. You know, it's like just been a thing that's like something that I've had to do. Like I was always in AP English class. And so I remember when you said that, I was like, yeah, I probably could do that, but I don't want to. Like I didn't want to. But
Yeah.
but the like takeaway from it was you were like, if you want, I don't think you necessarily said contribute, but it's like if you want to make waves or like make a difference, you have to do something that nobody else is doing, because everybody else is running furnaces and pouring molds and making molds, and everybody else is already doing that. So you might want to find something that nobody else is doing and like find a vacuum and then find a way to fill that void. And so then it's like 10 years later and I'm like, hey,
There you are, right?
let's start a podcast. And
Well,
I think I told you that story already when we were up in
and we talked a little bit about that. Yeah. I mean, I think that, okay, so I have had a bee in my bonnet for a long time about this is a significant activity, and it's a significant community. It's a very small, like we think this is a big community, it's a movement, blah, blah, blah. This is tiny. Like what we do is, I mean, it's really tiny and in the sort of bigger picture. But I think it's really significant, and I think it's unique. And I think there are a lot of special things, and your podcast is really bringing out a lot of those things that are special and unique about this community and this activity and the mindset of the people that sort of pursue this. So the bee in my bonnet was that somebody should be writing about this. Like, this needs to be talked about. It needs to be written about, and it needs to be written about beyond just the sort of spectacle of it, because it is a spectacle. But it's significant. And I was trying to figure out a way, like in thinking about what I was going to talk about with you, this idea of transubstantiation is really important to me also. And the sort of the transformative and nature of what we do and what this activity is about. Like, you're taking all these like crazy things that might or might not work. You're investing all of this energy into it, and intent into it, and belief into it, and faith into it, it's nucleating in a moment that sort of becomes something that is the embodiment of an idea, as opposed to the illustration of an idea or the description of an idea. Like, it is the thing that it is talking about being, and that's like the Eucharist, right? Like, it's not just blessed and becomes, it is the embodiment of this. Like, and there's a really great book called The Mende Blacksmiths that talks about like the power of blacksmiths and the metal workers in the Mende West African culture. And there's, I think the term's called NASA or whatever, right? But it's like this idea that you're breathing life into it, and it is the literal presentation of this belief. It's not the allegorical, or the metaphorical. It is literally the embodiment of our ideas. And that really, I think, is something that's true in this activity, in this community. So I think people should be talking about this. And I think there's a lot of sort of like real fertile territory there. And then you throw in class, you throw in like labor, and you throw like I love these subjects. And I really want somebody to write about this. And I think David's talked about this too, is like, we need a writer, like we need a Lucy Lepard, right? Or a Clement Greenberg or Clemente, talking about Ars Primavera or something. Like we need somebody writing. I think somebody should be writing about this. And so I've been always like pestering people, like, you need to write about this. You need to write about this. You need to write about this, And so I'm like, Laura, you need to write about this. Not that necessarily you need, to be the only one to write about it necessarily, but it needs to be written about. And you're right to think that there is a bit of a vacuum there. I've also thought, well, I should do it, right? Like if I want this, I should do it, but I don't want to do it either,
Yeah, neither of us. But maybe.
So when you started the podcast, I'm like, yes, there we go. Like somebody's doing it, and I think you're doing a great job of it. That's this again, not that my opinion matters, but this is the moment where I get to give you some sort of kudos. You've found a way to have a voice that is uniquely yours. You found a way to contribute, and on multiple platforms, not just with the podcast, but you found a way to acknowledge and recognize a history that could very easily disappear, and I want to thank you for that, and I'm flattered to have some tangential connection to it, but everybody who you've interviewed and everybody who's talked has said how significant they feel this is, and that's because it's significant, So you should be proud of the work that you're doing, and it is work, and everybody knows it's work. And again, that's another sort of principle of this community. It's like work to make it a reality, work to make it happen, work to realize these ideas, and in very few places in our world is this sort of bootstrapism, meritocracy, like a reality. And in our community, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the hard work you're putting into this, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for it.
Thank you.
Yep.
And thank
you. I'm glad you're doing it. I don't have to.
And maybe somebody who's listening will realize, hey, maybe somebody is a really good writer and likes researching and the theory. Cause I think that there's, like you said, such a rich amount of things to write about. And so, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit in the after show, but maybe you had something at the beginning that you teased me about right before we started recording. So,
well, now I'm sort of maybe like second guessing myself, but
then we can.
I don't know. But one of the things that I've noticed in most of the podcasts is like everybody's very positive, and and we want it to be a positive experience. But I haven't heard many, and correct me if I'm wrong, talk about like one of your questions about like the scaredest you've been, or I can't think of I got to look the question up real quick, but it was like, cat just opened the door.
The cat. I mean, it's like the worst thing that's ever happened at an Iron event, the most scared you've ever been.
Yeah, the worst thing that's happened, the most scared you've been. And I think maybe at the risk of sort of outing myself, I think I'd like to talk about the most scared I've ever been and sort of the worst experience I've ever had, and see where that goes. Because I don't know. I mean, am I correct to say that you haven't really talked about that much, or you haven't had people?
You're right. There's a lot of. Because I want people to feel comfortable when they come on this podcast and get their story down for the record from their own perspective. But I don't want people to think, oh, well, she asked that person some really hardball questions, I don't want to go on that show. I want people to
Yes.
feel like they're, and so a lot of people, these stories of scared or bad things that happen, that's optional. And there's
Yeah.
some things that people, they don't want to talk about, they don't want to remember.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that they're not important, but it
Yep.
does mean I'm not going to hold people's feet to the fire and make them feel uncomfortable.
How about this then? I am, and I think I've always been relatively comfortable failing publicly, and I've put myself in positions where I have failed publicly, and let's say that the teaser for the after show is you know a no holds barred how Noah has fucked up or things that have terrified me, because I've had a couple things that have scared me and I don't want to talk about, but I want to talk about.
And I feel like here is when we're talking about that being on the edge.
Yeah, yeah.
Being on the edge and fear. And you probably didn't even plan that, but that's what you're about to do.
Not at all. I wouldn't have ever planned anything like that.
All right. Well, now I'm very interested because it's intriguing to me, because you're right. Most people tend to shy away from the ugly moments, but they are truths in our, in this community and in this field of work with iron casting. So
not that I'm the end all be all in it, but like let's talk about how I've screwed things up or things that have scared me.
Okay. I'm excited in a like kind of way. All right. So let's say goodbye to the public audience. So everybody who's been watching, thank you for watching and listening. And thank you, Noah, for being on the show today and telling us all your stories. And we're going to go on over to the after show and listen to some more. So thanks, everybody. And we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. This conversation doesn't have to end here. To gain access to the after show where Noah and I continue our discussion, visit the website patreon.com/thepodcastiron. Their supporters at any contribution level get access to the after show recordings for every episode that's ever been published. So if you're new here, the after show is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes more, with each show's guest, where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story behind the privacy of a paywall. So yes, if you want to sign up, you'll get access to listen to Noah's after show and all of the other after shows with all of my earlier guests. So if you like what I'm doing with this project and you want to support the show, becoming a Patreon member is the best way to do that. For as little as $1 a month, I mean, you can contribute more if you want, but every $1 really does make a difference to subsidize the costs that I undertake to make this resource publicly available. And you'll get the after shows, so it's a win for everyone. Well, in conclusion of this public portion of the episode, I hope you enjoyed listening to this interview. Noah's advice for us to be fearless was something that I really needed to hear right now. And I encourage you to find some way in your life to be fearless as well, even if it's in one small way. Because the more you do something, the more comfortable you'll be to do it in the future. Noah, thank you for being so open and honest with me during this interview. And also, thank you so much for all of the ways that you've helped me in the past and recently with helping me source mold making supplies. But also thank you for everything that you do for the community through 6 Mile Sculpture Works, through the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance, and everything that you do outside of those roles, and all the work that you've done in the past to assist the national conference at SLOS. You do a lot, and it means a lot. So thank you for everything. And now, in closing, thank you to our top supporters for helping me afford to continue offering this show. Thank you to the Western Cast Iron Art Alliance for being a top supporter of the show, and thank you for all of the work that you do in service of the Western region of the U.S. and its cast iron artists. Thank you, SLOS Metal Arts, for being a top supporter for this podcast, and also for your year-round work as a National Center for Iron Casting and Metal Arts, and for offering our community visiting artist and resident artist opportunities that actually offer realistic living benefits. And thank you, Crescent Creative, for being a top supporter of the podcast Iron and for demonstrating how artists can create an interesting and inspiring living for themselves by producing custom client work. You are a great role model to many of us. And yes, thank you to all of our individual supporters on Patreon. The funds that everyone there contribute are invaluable to help me continue to offer to put on this show. But if you don't have it in your budget to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, I understand. Instead, if you could please share this podcast with someone you think would be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and for that I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.